Beyond dealership floors, the freeze has profound implications for American workers and local economies that depend on a fluid supply chain. German automakers maintain significant operations in the US, not only through sales and distribution networks, but also via manufacturing facilities. BMW's massive plant in Spartanburg, South Carolina, previously the largest BMW facility in the world, faces potential production slowdowns due to disruptions in the supply of imported components. Similarly, Mercedes-Benz's Alabama factory and Volkswagen's Tennessee plant are intricately tied to transatlantic trade logistics that now hang in the balance. The decision to suspend shipments was not made lightly. German manufacturers have spent decades building their brand presence and operational infrastructure in the American market. Their investments have fueled job creation, fostered innovation, and deepened bilateral economic ties. Yet faced with punitive tariffs that significantly alter the cost-benefit calculus of exporting to the US, German automakers are choosing to assert leverage in what is rapidly becoming a high-stakes negotiation. This development signals a shift from reactive diplomacy to economic assertiveness. By freezing shipments, Germany's automotive industry is not merely protesting. It is actively testing the resolve of a new administration that has promised to challenge global norms and reorient American trade relationships. The move effectively forces the issue into the political and public spotlight, drawing attention to the tangible consequences of protectionist policy. Market analysts are already recalibrating forecasts. The freeze introduces a new level of uncertainty into the automotive sector, where long lead times and just-in-time inventory models leave little room for prolonged disruption. Supply chain analysts warn of cascading effects as halted shipments could lead to bottlenecks, not just in vehicle delivery, but in parts distribution, maintenance services, and after-sales support. German automakers' parts and accessories are integral to many vehicles already on US roads, and any extended interruption risks undermining the long-term viability of servicing those cars. On the consumer side, prices are expected to rise sharply, not only for German vehicles, but across the luxury and premium segment. With German models removed from the supply stream, demand pressure may shift toward other European or Japanese imports, potentially triggering similar retaliatory moves from those regions, or exacerbating the strain on already fragile trade ties. Financial markets have responded with heightened volatility. Shares in major German automotive firms took a hit following the announcement, reflecting investor anxiety over revenue losses from one of the world's largest car markets. At the same time, American companies with ties to German brands, ranging from logistics providers to parts suppliers, are grappling with downward revisions of earnings expectations and operational instability. The economic implications are matched by the geopolitical weight of the moment. Germany, as Europe's industrial powerhouse, is keenly aware of the precedent this conflict could set. The freeze in shipments underscores an intent to draw a red line, signaling that economic partnerships must be built on mutual respect rather than unilateral imposition. Berlin, while seeking to avoid a broader trade war, is evidently willing to back its rhetoric with impactful economic action when its interests are challenged. Observers in Brussels and across European capitals are closely monitoring the standoff as it holds potential ramifications for broader US-EU relations. A fracture in the auto-trade relationship between Germany and the US could lead to a domino effect, prompting similar confrontations in other sectors. The European Union, already engaged in trade negotiations on various fronts, may be compelled to intervene or support member states in confronting protectionist pressures. The timing of the freeze is particularly sensitive. The US auto industry is in a transitional phase with growing investments in electric vehicles, autonomous driving technologies, and sustainable manufacturing. German automakers, many of whom are at the forefront of these innovations, have played a vital role in advancing the American automotive landscape. Interruptions in collaboration and technology exchange could hinder progress at a moment when global competition is intensifying, especially from Chinese manufacturers and emerging startups. While the Trump administration's tariff policy is pitched as a measure to revitalize American industry, the retaliatory freeze illustrates how complex and interwoven global commerce has become. The automotive industry is not an isolated domain. It is a nexus of engineering, logistics, finance, and international relations. Disrupting this ecosystem can produce ripple effects far beyond the intended scope, affecting everything from employment rates in specific states to innovation cycles in critical technologies. Behind closed doors, lobbying efforts are intensifying. US-based subsidiaries of German automakers, along with local and state officials who benefit from foreign direct investment, are likely pressing the federal government for clarification or reversal of the tariffs. At the same time, business chambers and transatlantic trade councils are mobilizing to underscore the mutual benefits of continued cooperation. But the freeze remains in effect with no indication of immediate reversal, and both sides appear entrenched. On the ground, dealerships and consumers are feeling the pinch. Buyers awaiting deliveries of German cars are receiving notifications of indefinite delays. Lease contracts and pre-orders are in limbo, and service departments report difficulties sourcing parts for routine maintenance. This immediate consumer impact highlights how deeply integrated German automotive supply chains are in the US economy, and how sensitive they are to policy shifts. For German automakers, the freeze is not without risk. Suspending exports to such a large and influential market can lead to erosion of market share as competitors move in to fill the void. Japanese, South Korean, and even American brands may see a short-term sales boost, potentially converting brand-loyal customers during the disruption. However, German executives appear to have calculated that the long-term cost of submitting to unfavorable trade terms outweighs the near-term losses. The freeze also serves as a litmus test for how other trade partners might respond to the Trump administration's broader agenda. If Germany, with its reputation for engineering excellence and export strength, is willing to draw a hard line, other nations may find themselves emboldened to challenge the US approach through similar economic measures. The implications extend beyond the auto industry setting the tone for how multilateral trade relations may evolve during this presidency. Strategically, this marks a pivotal moment in the narrative of global commerce. For decades, globalization has promoted the notion that goods, capital, and ideas should move freely across borders to maximize innovation and economic growth. The German shipment freeze disrupts this narrative and introduces a new era of retaliatory pragmatism where economic clout is wielded not only through diplomatic channels, but through immediate and impactful corporate action. This evolving confrontation between German automakers and the Trump administration is more than a dispute over tariffs. It is a microcosm of a broader ideological clash between protectionism and globalism. German brands, often positioned as symbols of precision, efficiency, and modernity, are now also standard bearers in a global battle over the rules of trade. With factories in Germany adjusting to the sudden redirection of inventory and US port authorities reporting a drop-off in scheduled arrivals, the physical manifestation of the freeze is unmistakable. Shipyards that typically offload thousands of vehicles monthly are eerily quiet. The logistical machinery that supports the transatlantic auto trade has ground to a halt, and with each passing day, the costs mount. Yet the freeze is not just about economics or logistics, it is about leverage. By pausing shipments, German automakers are sending a message to the US government and the global market. Economic partnerships must be reciprocal, and attempts to unilaterally rewrite the rules will not go unanswered. Whether this tactic will yield concessions or further entrench hostilities remains to be seen. But the boldness of the move ensures it will be remembered as a defining moment in trade relations. This episode may well become a case study in how corporations navigate the increasingly politicized terrain of global commerce. It reflects the power of multinational firms to shape geopolitical discourse, not through statements or lobbying alone, but through decisive operational shifts that affect thousands of lives and billions in revenue. In the coming weeks, all eyes will be on what unfolds next. For now, the freeze holds, the ports are quiet, and the standoff between German automakers and the Trump administration continues to play out on the world stage. The freeze on US shipments by German automakers has become more than a mere economic maneuver. It is the crystallization of decades of globalization, now clashing with a sudden turn toward economic nationalism. As this policy standoff deepens, it creates an inflection point not only for the automotive industry, but for global trade governance itself. The implications are sprawling, reaching into areas far removed from car showrooms and manufacturing plants. The psychological impact of this move, particularly within the business and investor communities, is impossible to ignore. For years, German engineering has enjoyed near-mythical status among American consumers and businesses. This frieze punctures that illusion of immutability and shows that even the most reliable international partners will withdraw their cooperation when the terms of engagement become untenable. German automakers are signaling that there are red lines, economic principles they will not compromise, even at the expense of short-term profit. This reaction also sends a ripple through supply chain strategy discussions across the globe. Boardrooms in Tokyo, Seoul, and Detroit are reassessing risk models. The traditional assumption that the US market is a stable and secure destination for foreign manufacturers is now in question. What was once seen as a bastion of free market capitalism has begun projecting unpredictability that rivals emerging markets. This shift forces global firms to think more defensively, stockpiling inventory, diversifying market dependencies, and decentralizing supply hubs to minimize future exposure to geopolitical shocks. In Germany, political leaders and business executives are consolidating their messaging. The German economy thrives on exports, and the auto industry is the crown jewel of its industrial output. By standing firm in the face of US tariffs, German automakers are asserting not only economic self-interest, but also national pride. The notion that they would acquiesce to a trade regime viewed as unilateral and punitive is inconceivable for a country that sees itself as the ethical custodian of industrial excellence. The shipping freeze is thus also a cultural statement, an assertion of values and identity in the face of political upheaval. Economic modeling underway in German finance ministries and corporate planning offices suggests that the fallout could cascade well beyond American shores. If the shipment freeze becomes prolonged, or escalates into a full trade war, German automakers might be compelled to increase their focus on Asian and emerging markets. This reorientation would involve not just marketing and sales, but also fundamental strategic changes in production, logistics, and design. The United States, long considered a trendsetter in consumer preferences, may find itself increasingly isolated as automakers cater to preferences from regions that offer greater consistency and fewer trade tensions. For instance, vehicle models once tailored for American roads and sensibilities, large SUVs, V8 engines, premium sports sedans, could gradually see reduced investment in favor of electrification trends and compact vehicle formats favored in Asia and Europe. The shipment freeze, therefore, has the potential to alter the very DNA of product development pipelines. Further complicating matters is the intricate web of financing that underpins automotive transactions. German automakers operate in concert with global banks, leasing institutions, and capital providers. Many of these financial products are tied to vehicle delivery schedules and sales volumes. With exports frozen, a significant portion of financial instruments linked to car imports becomes unstable. This instability ripples through financial portfolios, affecting credit ratings, lease renewals, and lending cycles. Such distortions in the automotive financing market can depress consumer spending and erode dealership profitability, even for those not directly affiliated with German brands. Meanwhile, economic retaliation does not occur in a vacuum. Germany's actions could trigger a chain of economic responses by other nations aligned with multilateralism. If other key exporters, Japan, South Korea, even the UK, view the US stance as a threat to the principles of global trade, they may adopt a coordinated or sympathetic response. The US could face not just a bilateral dispute with Germany, but a broader coalition of economic powers pushing back against protectionism. Within the US, this freeze also sharpens the already polarized debate over the future of domestic manufacturing. Proponents of the tariffs hail the move as a defense of American workers, asserting that the absence of foreign competition could spur renewed investment in American auto plants. But critics warn that such logic ignores the deeply integrated nature of automotive manufacturing. German plants in the US do not simply assemble vehicles. They drive local economies, support regional suppliers, and often export vehicles back to Europe and beyond. These operations are not foreign outposts. They are embedded within the fabric of American industrial life. By halting shipments, German automakers are effectively creating a test case to demonstrate just how interdependent the two economies have become. It's a real-time experiment, showing that attempts to isolate production by national origin can inadvertently harm the very workers and industries they aim to protect. From Tennessee to South Carolina, governors and mayors are voicing concern that the freeze will stall local growth, reduce tax revenues, and create political liabilities for both parties. In Europe, economic institutions are debating countermeasures. Although the shipment freeze is an industry-led initiative, its potential to destabilize transatlantic trade may prompt policy responses at the governmental level. The European Commission could explore broader trade rebalancing measures, revisiting tariffs on U.S. goods such as agricultural products, technology, or financial services. What began as an automotive dispute could rapidly evolve into a multi-front economic conflict involving multiple sectors and billions in traded goods. Technology partnerships are another casualty of this dispute. German and American firms have historically collaborated on research and development in autonomous driving, connectivity, battery innovation, and materials science. These joint ventures rely on fluid capital flows, intellectual property sharing, and unrestricted personnel movement. The shipment freeze disrupts this collaborative environment, potentially leading to duplicated R&D efforts, fractured innovation pathways, and lost time in a race where technological edge is everything. Universities and research institutes on both sides of the Atlantic could also suffer. Many educational partnerships, student exchanges, and engineering fellowships are built around auto sector cooperation. A sustained freeze could erode academic ties, limit funding for joint research, and restrict the movement of engineering talent that has historically moved freely between Germany and the US. These are intangible but deeply consequential losses that slow the flow of ideas and the pace of progress. The media response, too, plays a critical role in shaping public opinion around this issue. German outlets frame the shipment freeze as a principled stand against economic coercion, while American media are divided. Some outlets echo the administration's justification, painting the freeze as a necessary short-term disruption to restore domestic industry. Others frame it as a reckless move that punishes consumers and undercuts economic stability. This divergence in media narratives complicates any path to reconciliation, as public perception hardens on both sides. Insurance markets, too, are bracing for impact. Automotive shipments are routinely covered by marine and cargo insurance, and any disruption in normal trade flows introduces new risk profiles. Delays in port storage, rerouting of shipments, and potential spoilage of time-sensitive materials all trigger clauses in insurance contracts that raise premiums and increase overhead for logistics providers. The shipment freeze thus reverberates into industries that seem only tangentially related, but are intimately tied to the rhythm of global trade. Legal frameworks are being tested in unprecedented ways. Force majeure. Clauses in supplier contracts, dealership agreements, and shipping terms are being scrutinized. Attorneys across multiple jurisdictions are being consulted on whether the tariffs and the freeze qualify as force majeure events, allowing parties to breach or renegotiate contracts without penalty. Litigation is a distinct possibility, especially if dealership groups or third-party importers attempt to hold manufacturers accountable for missed deliveries or financial losses. Investor confidence in the long-term stability of transatlantic business relations is facing a serious test. Venture capital firms and institutional investors, always sensitive to geopolitical risk, are watching the situation closely. Their willingness to fund future automotive startups, mobility platforms, or infrastructure projects that depend on cross-border synergy may diminish. If investors perceive the US as an unpredictable or hostile environment for international business, capital could begin flowing elsewhere, further dampening innovation and job creation. The shipment freeze also casts a long shadow over environmental goals. German automakers have been central players in the global shift toward electrification and reduced emissions. Their premium electric vehicles, such as the BMW i-Series, the Audi e-tron lineup, and Mercedes-Benz EQ models, represent some of the most advanced sustainable transportation options on the market. Their absence from the US undermines broader efforts to promote cleaner transportation and meet emissions targets. Environmental groups are concerned that without strong EV contenders from Germany, the momentum toward greener alternatives may slow, especially if the market reverts to less efficient domestic models to fill the void. Another less visible but significant aspect of this freeze is its effect on international standards and regulatory alignment. The US and the EU have often worked together to harmonize safety, emissions and performance standards for vehicles. This cooperation streamlines production and benefits consumers through consistent quality and safety benchmarks. The freeze, however, risks dismantling this collaborative framework. If automakers shift focus to markets with more accommodating regulatory environments, there could be divergence in standards, increasing production costs and complicating compliance for global companies. From a logistics perspective, the freeze has disoriented a meticulously calibrated global shipping ecosystem. Automotive logistics depend on consistent, predictable scheduling of vessels, rail, and trucking. The sudden removal of German auto shipments from American ports disrupts vessel rotations, leaves shipping containers idle, and alters warehouse capacity planning. Shipping companies are scrambling to reallocate resources, often at a financial loss, and downstream effects include delays in other sectors that share transport networks with automotive cargo. As the freeze stretches on with no resolution in sight, it becomes a case study in how modern economies are vulnerable, not just to technological disruption or natural calamities, but to the political whims of leadership transitions. German automakers, once emblematic of smooth, precise, uninterrupted commerce, are now at the epicenter of a global reckoning over the rules, priorities, and ethics of international trade. The decision by German automakers to freeze all vehicle shipments to the United States continues to unravel layers of complexity that define global trade in the 21st century. While the public eye gravitates toward the headlines, the halted cargo, empty showrooms, and the direct clash between the US presidency and Germany's industrial might beneath the surface, this event is also exposing long-standing dependencies, vulnerable infrastructures, and delicate diplomatic balances that have underpinned the global automotive ecosystem for decades. One of the immediate consequences is the abrupt disruption of dealer-manufacturer relationships, particularly those forged under carefully negotiated franchise agreements. These long-term legal arrangements between US-based dealerships and German parent companies are predicated on the uninterrupted delivery of vehicles, parts, and marketing support. With the supply chain frozen, these dealers face potential contract violations, declining revenue, and reputational harm in their local markets. Many of these dealers invested heavily in brand-specific showrooms, training programs, and certified maintenance services, all of which now stand at risk of becoming stranded assets. Furthermore, consumer financing structures tied to German vehicle imports are in a precarious position. Auto loans, leases, and fleet contracts often depend on timing-specific delivery and pricing models, especially when they include trade-in value guarantees and interest rate promotions. With deliveries halted, many of these arrangements could collapse or require renegotiation, leading to a wave of defaults, early terminations, or legal disputes. Financial institutions that manage large automotive portfolios are actively revising their exposure models and preparing for customer service disruptions that could strain their operations. The freeze is also having a measurable impact on aftermarket industries, a sector often overlooked but essential to the automotive lifecycle. Companies that specialize in tuning, customization, or performance enhancements for German vehicles now face a sharp contraction in business. With fewer new models entering the market, customer demand for upgrades and retrofits has declined. Moreover, some aftermarket businesses rely on forward integration with manufacturers, such as access to original specifications and early model releases, which are now suspended. A less visible but crucial segment impacted by the freeze involves intellectual property and technology licensing agreements. German carmakers frequently license proprietary technology, such as safety systems, telematics platforms, or battery management software, to US-based engineering firms and tech startups. These partnerships are often structured to scale with the distribution of vehicles, which provide the end-user platform for these innovations. With shipments halted, the market reach for such technologies is reduced, altering revenue streams and disrupting development roadmaps. University-sponsored automotive research centers, many of which exist in collaboration with German automakers, are entering a phase of uncertainty. These institutions rely heavily on grant funding, access to pre-production vehicles, and shared datasets for engineering studies. Projects related to crash analysis, autonomous navigation, or emissions impacto de esta congelación en las normas internacionales y la armonización regulatoria es otra característica importante, aunque menos obvia. Estados Unidos y la Unión Europea han colaborado frecuentemente para estandarizar el rendimiento, la seguridad y las emisiones de los automóviles. Al establecer normas uniformes de calidad y seguridad, esta colaboración agiliza la fabricación y beneficia a los clientes. Sin embargo, la congelación corre el riesgo de destruir esta estructura de cooperación. Podrían surgir normas divergentes si los fabricantes de automóviles trasladan su concentración a áreas con marcos regulatorios más flexibles, lo que aumentaría los costos de producción y dificultaría el cumplimiento normativo para las corporaciones multinacionales. Desde el punto de vista logístico, la congelación ha generado confusión en un sistema de transporte marítimo internacional cuidadosamente equilibrado. Una programación consistente y predecible de camiones, ferrocarriles y buques es esencial para la logística automotriz. El cese abrupto de los envíos de vehículos alemanes desde puertos estadounidenses altera la planificación de la capacidad de los almacenes, interfiere con la rotación de buques y deja inactivos los contenedores de envío. Las empresas navieras están reasignando frenéticamente sus recursos, a menudo con pérdidas. Los retrasos en otras industrias que comparten redes de transporte con el transporte de carga automotriz también son ejemplos de impactos posteriores. A medida que la paralización continúa sin un fin a la vista, sirve como un caso de estudio sobre cómo las economías contemporáneas son susceptibles a los caprichos políticos de los cambios de liderazgo, además de las perturbaciones tecnológicas y los desastres naturales. Antaño símbolo de un comercio fluido, preciso e ininterrumpido, los fabricantes de automóviles alemanes se encuentran hoy en el centro de un debate global sobre las normas, los valores y la ética del comercio global. La decisión de los fabricantes alemanes de detener todos los envíos de vehículos a Estados Unidos revela la complejidad que caracteriza al comercio internacional en el siglo XXI. Este evento está revelando dependencias de larga data, infraestructuras vulnerables y delicados equilibrios diplomáticos que han sustentado el ecosistema automotriz global durante décadas, incluso mientras la atención pública se centra en los titulares, la carga detenida, las salas de exhibición vacías y la confrontación directa entre la presidencia estadounidense y el poder industrial alemán en la sombra. La ruptura repentina de las relaciones entre concesionarios y fabricantes, especialmente las establecidas mediante acuerdos de franquicia meticulosamente elaborados, es una de las repercusiones inmediatas. El suministro continuo de automóviles, piezas y asistencia de marketing es la base de estos acuerdos legales a largo plazo entre concesionarios estadounidenses y empresas matrices alemanas. Estos concesionarios se arriesgan a incumplir sus contratos, reducir sus ingresos y perjudicar su reputación en sus mercados locales, como resultado de la interrupción de la cadena de suministro. Muchos de estos concesionarios realizaron inversiones significativas en servicios de mantenimiento certificados, salas de exposición específicas para cada marca y cursos de capacitación, todo lo cual ahora corre el riesgo de convertirse en activos inutilizados. Además, los acuerdos de financiación al consumo vinculados a la importación de automóviles alemanes se encuentran en una situación vulnerable. Los modelos de entrega y precios con plazos específicos se utilizan con frecuencia en préstamos para automóviles, arrendamientos y contratos de flotas, especialmente cuando incorporan promociones de tasas de interés y garantías de valor de intercambio. Muchos de estos acuerdos pueden fracasar o requerir renegociación como